Funky fantasy. The bowl. Stratosaurus. It's the War of Nerds. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another yet episode of the War of Nerds podcast, Star Wars edition. No, I'm not going to bore you with that. But your hosts, the Bearded Nerds, are here. I'm Nathan Helm.
Alfred Muller.
Ryan, also known as Stratosaurus, but it's a trap.
Everybody go home. Ha ha! Admiral Akbar. Very nice. So,
Ooh, Star Wars.
How's everybody doing? Is everybody having a good week? You guys doing well with all your personal life stuff and writing?
Fantastic.
Yep, so far so good. Finished my young adult novel and now working on book 3.
I got book 2's cover actually back, so I'm gonna be releasing that this week. So
Awesome.
It's exciting.
Simply fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And I am got about 19% left on the re-edition of the first book, so I'm close. I really am.
Nice.
So gonna push through it, power through it, but also not overload myself and try to make myself go crazy, which is why I love the fact that we're doing this podcast. And for all you wonderful listeners at home, if you have your own hobby or you're thinking about getting into writing, make sure you do yourself a huge colossal favor. Do not overload yourself because you were gonna hit burnout really fast. So have other hobbies. Don't be afraid to spend time with your family. Actually spend time with your family. Like, prioritize your actual real life, because I've got news for you. As an indie author, writing books is not really a career that you can count on right away. So, use it as a passion, have fun with it. Maybe the money will come down the road, but just my 2 cents.
Especially if the family's going to be the one that has to put up with you while you're writing and stuck in your head for hours on end. So definitely spend time with them.
Absolutely. They're the support system.
100%. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, Star Wars edition today, and really excited. We're going to go over all the great, wonderful works of art from George Lucas, the man himself, who created one of our fondest childhood memories, and then took a huge dump on it. No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot of people who are angry about the prequels, but no more so, you can get everybody on board to say the sequels were worse than the prequels. So, we're just going to talk about everything Star Wars. We've got multiple episodes for Star Wars planned, so if you hear something that we don't talk about, don't worry. We've got lots of stuff planned, but we're going to go around the world, have a little bit of a debate talk. I'll freeload the questions, and if you guys have questions who are listening to the podcast via Spotify, iHeart, or on YouTube, please reach out with any questions that you have as well. So, should we start off with the original trilogy, guys?
I think so.
Yeah, definitely.
So, original trilogy, starting way back in yonder 1977 with A New Hope. At that time was only called Star Wars, which my dad still has the original VHS.
Mine too.
So, and as the original trilogy goes, what is your guys' favorite one out of those 3? And we'll start up top with either Ryan or Alfred, and we'll come back around to me.
Go ahead, Alfred.
So mine is probably what's the word? A controversial opinion, but Return of the Jedi is actually my favorite.
What's your least?
I don't have one.
Yeah,
that's okay.
For those
They're
3,
kind of
definitely.
tied for second.
How about you, Ryan?
It's so hard because there's things in both of the 2 that follow that really, I think, tie everything together, and there's parts I really like. But A New Hope, it may be the nostalgia, but that movie just sets up everything. These droids are not the droids or just everything about that movie just set up so much of my love for sci-fi and space travel and lightsabers and galactic battles. I mean, just that movie was the jumping off point for me. So anything that came after it is always just going to be associated with A New Hope for me.
100%. These are not the droids you're looking for. Freaking Alec Guinness is the original Old Ben. That was, you meet this little snotty farm kid named Luke, like, oh, but I wanted to go to Toshi Station to pick up power converters. Yeah, well, you can go there after you milk the blue milk and do the cows and learn the
But-
Force and everything else, right?
But you
So,
can bullseye those womp rats. All right.
oh, 100%. Womp rats on Tatooine for days. Yeah, it's so I'm kind of on board with Ryan, but the Empire Strikes Back is that iconic classic remembrance of the original trilogy where Luke finds out that Vader's his father. You have that iconic lightsaber duel on Cloud City. Lando Calrissian comes in with one of the classic lines like, "You got a lot of nerve coming back here after what you pulled, you old scoundrel." So Chewie's over there, and it's the adventure of Episode 5. Luke going to meet with Master Yoda on Dagobah and learning about just everything about from the Force. Old Ben's gone, so the only master and connection that he had to not only his father and the Clone Wars and his mentor of the Force, and he's got to learn how to get past all that. He doesn't even know Leia's his sister at this point in time. And so all the things that happen, Luke finally learns or gets a premonition that Leia might be his sister in Episode 5. And just that lightsaber duel on Cloud City. Han gets a lot of love on Episode 5 before being frozen in the carbonite. At the end, Lando's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't have a choice. I didn't know what to do. Chewie, take it easy." Lando's one of my favorite characters. I know he's not around that much, but so Empire. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
do love the darkness of Empire, and I know Lucas was going through a divorce at that time, so a lot of that came out in it. But as an adult who likes the overcoming the darkness, that movie is great for that. Like the characters are at some of their lowest points after that movie, and to see them rise up in Return of the Jedi, I think that's why it's my favorite. But you can't have that without Empire Strikes Back.
Absolutely.
Can we talk about how now this gets a little bit into Star Wars theory, which will have episodes where I just completely blow all your people's minds with Star Wars theory. Again, if you want a guy to watch on YouTube, his name is Star Wars Theory, and you can get really deep into the Star Wars lore from the comics and the books, everything that's canon via non-canon, et cetera, video games, blah, blah, blah. But the Return of the Jedi, so Luke comes back from, we don't know actually what he was doing during that time gap between Empire. From what we understand is he was training, part-time training with Yoda, part-time going around and looking for ancient Jedi artifacts, and also part-time, who knows. But the first time you see him, he's in black Sith robes, and he force chokes a couple of Gregorian guards. So Jedis don't use force chokes. Not ever once. You see Anakin do it after he becomes Vader, but
Trained Jedis don't.
aha. Because remember, there is no dark, there is no light, there is only the Force. Which you can see all about that in Star Wars Rebels, which is the greatest animated Star Wars show ever created. So yeah, that's pretty much Return of the Jedi is just a lot of fun. That Alfred, you mentioned about that kind of classic anime style battle at the end where, Sheev Palpatine's sitting back there like, so be it. You want to be electrocuted and fried and not showing the dark side, then you can die.
I love too that, I mean, we were just talking about family in the beginning of the episode, and I love because like my dad and I have a great relationship. We always have, and seeing Anakin come around because his son was literally being tortured before him, and realizing like that bond couldn't be broken, and that's what finally makes him overcome his dark side and save his son. That's one of my favorite moments.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean that pretty much, the original trilogy is special to us. It was what started Star Wars. Yeah, those are It's just Return of the Jedi is just fun. And like you were talking about with like Vader seeing his son being tortured, and that's what brings him around, because he was a Sith, but he was never truly all the way gone, no matter what anybody says.
It's kind of cool too. Like it was family and love that brought him into the dark side with Padme, and then it was family and love that brought him out of the dark side. And I like that kind of
Yeah.
bookend. As much as we may despise the prequels, Lucas at least kept that true to the character.
Yep.
But for A New Hope too, like that nostalgia and that first introduction, like just the opening scene, and you get what is going to be Star Wars, and it's just like, man, that's amazing. Luke doesn't even have a lightsaber for the majority of that movie. I don't think at all, with the exception of just practicing, and it just ends up being iconic magic, I think.
I agree. So, question before we move on to the next set of movies. We're all probably on the younger side for when these movies originally came out. Did we know the spoiler of Vader going into the movies, or were you guys actually surprised when you first saw that scene?
Surprised, I didn't know.
I don't remember. I think I was
See,
surprised.
I feel like it was spoiled for me in my generation, and I'm 36, but they were before I came to, like, when they came out, by the time I saw them, like, it was already spoiled, I think, for me personally. But I still found like the joy in those movies despite that. But just to go on a slight tangent, the Pitch Perfect movie, the Anna Kendrick line of Vader being German for father, I just wonder how many people back then put that together and connected the dots in that time, and how many people were truly surprised by it.
I'm sure many were surprised because it's considered one of the greatest cinematic reveals of all time. And
Absolutely.
I mean, at that time, you got to think. I mean, that was peak Lucas, so I'm sure he knew what he was doing with the name. But I also wouldn't be surprised if it was a random coincidence.
Yeah, I was 5. I was 5 when I saw the original Star Wars. And like I said, it didn't say A New Hope on the VHS. It was just Star Wars. And I watched those with my dad, and I remember sitting through Empire Strikes Back and like, Luke, I am your father. No.
Yep.
Yes, I am your father. Now come with me and we'll join together and take over the galaxy. Never! Very well. Enjoy your life with no hand. Chop. Fall down through the chutes and best bin, and then guess what? Your sister is force sensitive, so she could sense your anguish, and she comes back to get you, and you get a robotic hand. And then, it was.
I think we could do like a whole deep dive on A New Hope to why it's so iconic and such a great story. But just one part I want to bring up is Obi-Wan sitting there and explaining to Anakin his version of the truth, which many young authors may just want to go out there and write, oh, well, yes, your father was blah, 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 blah. But Lucas's foresight to write the character not wanting to ruin the memory of Anakin to his son and explaining it as Darth Vader killed your father. And then you learn in Empire, I am your father. And it's did Obi-Wan lie, or was he trying to protect the memory of a great friend? And it's beautiful, the masterful writing in that.
And that goes down that conspiracy line of, with that lie of omission, does that sway Luke's path further on? Because obviously in the later movies, the later books, he has a tumultuous path that's not always like walking the line of one side or the other. So
Luke is known as one of the, if not the only, Jedi who ever became just a pure, not just gray Jedi, but just a pure master of the Force. I mean, this guy literally went vengeful, killed himself to become a ghost and go out into the afterlife and take somebody out. and then bring himself back to life. I mean, that's Luke Skywalker, the man who trained an entire legion of new Jedi, though they, the whole thing with Leia and Han's twins, it was a little bit different from the sequel movies. They called him Kylo, Ben Solo.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it was a bit different in the books of, I don't remember right now what Leia and Han's children's names were.
Because there were
But
like
I'll
multiple kids too for each, I thought.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, there's a lot of theory when it comes to Luke and Ben too. There's the whole thing with Rey. They're like, well, is this a love child between descendant of Luke and old Ben? That would make her connected to the Skywalker bloodline, but also connected to the Kenobi bloodline. And because there's theories that Luke had a child, and that his child and his wife was wiped out by the order. Oh my gosh, my brain's splitting here. But the order that Kylo Ren had, the Knights of Ren. There's rumors that the Knights of Ren took out Luke's wife, Luke's child, and that was what drove him to going basically insane and completely disbanding the Jedi Temple and going out to hiding. Now, I don't know if I agree with all of that, but I think there's some interesting points that could go down theory roads when talking about that.
Which we'll get
what
into
is
later on.
Yeah, what is canon, what isn't canon. We talk about something that should be canon. Starkiller should be canon. Okay, if any Star Wars character from a video game could be canon, I would like it to be Starkiller because he was awesome.
Yeah. So with all this talk of sequels, do we want to jump into the sequel series and then go to the prequels, or do we want to do chronological order of release and go to the prequels?
We'll go chronological. We'll go to the prequels. We'll go in the order of the years that they came out, because I'm gonna yell a bit about the sequels. So, so Round the World style prequels, starting in 1999 with The Phantom Menace, which it gets a lot of bad rap, but honestly, it's my second favorite of the prequel series behind Revenge of the Sith.
Actually, that's my favorite of the prequels, and I know, like you said, I know it gets some bad rap, but maybe because you and I were so young, like I'm 32, so I'm not far behind Ryan, and I was young when that movie came out, so I enjoyed it because I think it was geared towards kids to kind of bring a new generation of Star Wars fans in. So I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it when I watched it.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
I was just gonna say controversial opinion, but Attack of the Clones was my favorite of the trilogy, which I know a lot of people don't like. And I think here's my defense of it. If you take out like the half hour of this turned into a pure romance movie, and you just take it for what it is in the beginning and the end of Attack of the Clones, it is a fantastic representation of the connection of the two movies. But they just took this detour that I know was meaningful to build the connection, but it just slowed everything down. And I think that's what so much pure hate came from. But so much of Attack of the Clones set up everything and just really connected things and had some of the best fight scenes in it and had some of the best like characters that just popped in out of nowhere. So like controversial, but that's my favorite of the three prequels.
I don't disagree with that. I agree that the romancy stuff is kind of drags it down, but as far as like the action, it did feel like a Star Wars movie in that regard, as far as the space travel, the different planets, the needing to accomplish a goal, and how Obi-Wan accomplishes his, how the villains start to interfere with that. I think that was very Star Wars. So yeah, it is my least favorite of the three, but that's not to say I disliked it when I watched it.
Yeah, if you take out the entire part of Anakin floating peaches and talking about his hate for sand and getting trampled by rhinos and laying in the grass and talking about in the most creepiest of ways how I love you, Padme, and then just going to slay a bunch of sand people, which was actually pretty awesome. It was the first time that Anakin actually went to the dark side in the prequel series. People are like, no, you never saw his eyes turn yellow until he took out the separatist leaders on Mustafar. It was like,
But that was the start
no,
of his path.
it was
Absolutely.
him killing all the sand people was his start. So here, a little bit of Star Wars theories to blow your mind. I won't go too depth into it, but Sheev Palpatine, one of the most powerful Sith Lords who ever lived, behind Darth Revan and Darth Plagueis, obviously.
Mhm.
Well, Sheev Palpatine, he had a bunch of these ancient Sith artifacts that sat underneath his temple room in Coruscant. He was soaking all that dark, juicy Sith energy up for all those years. How he maintained Sith alchemy. They're like, no, he electrocuted himself. That's how he ended. No, he didn't. Okay, Sith lightning has never deformed somebody like that. And if you look, that is the true. Look at Plagueis. That dude's uglier than an alien. All right, that is Palpatine's true nature. He started manipulating Anakin from the moment he ever found him.
Mhm.
And in Attack of the Clones, he started the closer he got to Padme, the more his emotions took hold. That led him towards, it's like Yoda says, the fear of emotions is hate leads to anger. Anger leads to uncertainty. That leads to the path to the dark side. It's not that emotions are bad. Yoda was one of the few who understood that. It was that the fear of the unknown was what led Jedis down a dark path because they couldn't control their emotions because the Jedi Council literally controlled all the Jedis to not have emotions, and that was their problem. So him slaughtering all the Sand People, and then that emotional moment with Lars getting to see, Shmi again, and that was really sad. But the arena battle at the end over on Geonosis was one of the sickest Star Wars. All these people, these only Jedis you get to see in like the animated Clone Wars,
Yep.
Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, one of the most legendary starfighter Jedis. I mean, Kit Fisto, Shakti, Luminar Unduli. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And other characters like, I'm the best bounty hunter in the whole dang galaxy. My name's Cad Bane. I love Cad Bane. Anyways, rant over. I won't go any more into Star Wars theory, but yeah, Revenge of the Sith is the most iconic of the prequels. I think just due to the of the Duel of the Fates with Obi-Wan and Anakin on Mustafar and Yoda and Sheev and the what the heck do you call it? What room is that where Palpatine always gave all of his where they had their conference meetings?
The Senate.
The Senate chambers.
Yeah.
So that was one of the coolest things ever. I mean, like Yoda just like reflecting stuff with the Force, and could Yoda have won that fight? Well, I don't think so. Not in that situation, because Sheev was in his element. He had absorbed all that energy for so long. He'd manipulated everyone in the Jedi Council, including Yoda. Yoda, the most wise and powerful Jedi who ever lived. The Council, and we don't even know what planet he's from. And he's a powerful force. But anyways, Revenge of the Sith is as my favorite of the prequels, followed by Phantom Menace, followed by Attack of the Clones.
I can see it.
I love Darth Maul as a villain.
Mhm.
Even though he really didn't get the screen time he should have. It was like that scene where he pulls out the lightsaber and you see one side light up and then the other. My mind was blown as a little kid, being like, oh, lightsabers can have two sides.
Yep.
And then he goes to take on two Jedis. It's just amazing. And then Count Dooku, he was a very interesting villain, and I think probably one of the deepest villains that was portrayed in the prequels, outside of Anakin and Revenge of the Sith, just because he was a former Jedi turned Sith. There was backstory that you got. It was very interesting for me. And then Revenge of the Sith, finding out, and I would pick it up like my dad and I were sitting there watching episode 1, and we were looking there, and I was like, wait a minute, that's the Senate guy. He's the one who's turns into Darth Sidious at the end and everything. So we had picked it out and thought that was kind of cool, and that kind of stuff. So then finally seeing I was right from episode 1 to episode 3, and seeing Darth Sidious finally come to power, and then Anakin fall, all of that was just, the story was there. It just, I think the execution fell flat sometimes.
Yeah.
Here, Darth Maul was this awesome Dathomirian assassin, right? And people are like, yeah, he was a Sith Lord. No, he actually wasn't a Sith at all. He was just a Dathomirian assassin because at that time, Count Dooku, Lord Tyrannus, was actually Sheev's current acolyte at that time. There are always two. And at that time, those were the two. Like Maul, if you really get deep into his story, not only about the Night Sisters, but the history behind Dathomir, you learn that Maul and Savat, his brother, were both betrayed by Sheev. They were just puppets for him. And that happens in the Clone Wars. It's really, really interesting backstory about that. Darth Maul was really never a bad guy. He was just really misguided. And then Duel of the Fates comes in. But I do have this question for you guys. When you were watching the prequel, you probably already knew this, but me as a kid, I was young. So I actually didn't know because if you remember in the original trilogy, they never called Darth Sidious Palpatine. It was always Lord Sidious. Did you know that Palpatine, Chancellor Palpatine, was Sidious until Revenge of the Sith?
I did not.
I didn't either.
That one actually caught me, like where the Darth Vader one was spoiled for me. I did not make that connection till if I did, it was late in Attack of the Clones. If not, it was in Revenge of the Sith that I finally got that part.
For me, it was when he's talking to the emissaries or the embassies, and the droid is walking, and you have the hologram, and his chin was moving, and I was like, that looks oddly familiar. Where have I seen that chin? And that's when I was talking about my dad and I were talking about it, and then all of a sudden, Palpatine comes back on, and I'm like, wait a minute. The way he was talking, it sounded so similar. And I won't take all the credit because, like I said, my dad and I discussed it, so it was possibly his influence to pick it up. But that's where I did realize it in episode 1, Phantom Menace.
I'll add to that for what you said, Alfred. You were talking about Dooku, who again, he actually wasn't a Sith as well. I mean, that's another man who was a Jedi who found he aligned more with the Separatists at the time. So with the droid army and the whole thing with Jedi Sifo-Dyas, who ordered the creation of the clone army, which was meant for good. So Dooku, if you need a good book for anybody who's listening, Master and Apprentice is a fantastic story about Qui-Gon to learn about his training with Tyrannus, because Tyrannus was his master and Yoda was Tyrannus's master. So there's some interesting development and background story about Dooku in there. But it was when Sheev Palpatine I found it interesting. He was on that battleship. Revenge of the Sith starts off banging. I mean, this blast, I hate flying, here's where the fun begins. And then they find Palpatine, Dooku's there, and Anakin's like, my powers have doubled since we last met. Ah, good. Twice the pride, double the fall. It's like the coolest thing. And then they fight, and Anakin's got both lightsabers, and Palpatine's like, good, Anakin, good. Kill him. Kill him now. And Anakin's like, I should do it. At that point, I knew that was Sidious. As soon as he said do it.
I just love Dooku's face at that point. Like, wait, what?
The look he gives him when he turns, he's like, what? Yeah, you were another puppet. He never wanted you. You were never part of his plans. It was always Anakin all along. You were just another pawn in the puzzle for Sheev Palpatine to manipulate everybody. The greatest mass manipulator of all time is Sheev Palpatine. And oh man, just that look on Dooku's face. He's like almost begging Anakin with his eyes not to do it. Could you imagine how different it could have been? Like if we had a what if episode of if Anakin said screw it and he turned the lightsabers off and is like, no, we're going to take him to the Senate to face trial because that's what the Jedis do.
It would have exposed everything right then and there.
And it could have saved Anakin because at that moment, Dooku realizes Anakin is going to follow the same fate he did, and he realizes, at least I like to think, that he was tricked, and kind of like a oh shit moment, oh no moment.
It's okay. We told people every once in a while we'd have those moments.
I think that's a wild moment.
But it really was that, man. When you think about it, that was Anakin's turning point. I mean, you had the one time even Palpatine said that. He's just like, he was too dangerous to be left alive. You remember your mother and the Sand People? Just more manipulation, because if Anakin wouldn't have killed Dooku, Palpatine would have just flung the handcuffs off. He's just like, so be it. And he would have probably slaughtered them both. I mean, Obi-Wan was already incapacitated. And another thing is Palpatine's just like, leave him. There's no time. His fate will be the same as ours.
Mhm.
Like, all that time with Palpatine, and then he's acting all afraid and stuff, but he miraculously never gets touched. Now, the Separatists didn't know that Chancellor Palpatine was Lord Sidious. None of them knew it, but he could have slaughtered everybody on that cruiser, no problem whatsoever. And Anakin wouldn't have stood a chance, not at that point, and neither would have Obi-Wan. Neither one of them would have stood a chance at that point in time. Really, if you think about it, Anakin never stood a chance against Palpatine. He became a puppet from the moment that he was discovered to the moment that Palpatine created. He knew that if he had to fight Obi-Wan, he would lose because he was lost in his emotions of becoming a new Sith. Obi-Wan was a better trained tactical warrior who studied defensively with his lightsaber style, and Obi-Wan would do what needed to be done. So he knew that was going to happen, and whether he showed that or not, he knew that was going to happen. Anakin would get chopped up. Yoda wouldn't be able to defeat Palpatine, not in his element. He would find his hurt, disabled acolyte. He's like, oh no, we must save him. Hurry, the time is limited. Takes that energy from Padme, sucks it across the galaxy into Anakin, and creates that suit. Now he's got a puppet for all time, because the minute that Vader would try to turn, Palpatine could short circuit his suit with Force lightning, and that would be it.
Mhm.
His breathing circuitry would be down. You think of the video games you've played, Vader was the only one to really ever suffer due to his suit's malfunctions. He was still that powerful with all of his limbs being chopped off. Anyways, you guys have anything else to add about the prequels, or?
No, not much.
I would like to do an episode at some point where we try and fix the prequels by like just throwing ideas out there, because I think we're all pretty good storytellers, to see if we can't try and come up with ideas, uh, or how we would have done the prequels, kind of thing.
That'd
And
be a
I
cool
actually
idea.
might have a possible guest that we could bring on for that episode. A
Mm.
super Star Wars lore nerd, just like us, trucker buddy of mine. So I'll see if I can't get him on for that episode. But otherwise,
Cool.
I'm down, because him and I do that all the time. It's
I
fun.
love it. So now the
Um,
dreaded sequel series.
from the man who brought you some of your fondest childhood memories, then took a classified dump on them, but then was taken over by new directors and completely crapped on, comes the sequel trilogy. Barf. So
Especially
Now,
where do
because
we
he
start?
had, well, I was just gonna say that Lucas had a sequel series planned, and he
mhm.
gave it to Disney, and Disney said, "Yeah, no."
And I think
Yeah,
one of the major issues with the trilogies, even outside of like the minor stuff that we'll delve into, was the fact that they kept switching the direction. It's three movies that are supposed to work together that had no communication between them. So it's like Alfred writes a book for the start of it, you write the middle, and I write the end, but we do zero communication other than here's the names of some characters. And then we try to see and make it fit together as three movies, not to mention connect it to a series that's already beloved. And it was destined to not survive.
Absolutely.
when you have a conglomerate multi-billionaire company that gets these movies from somebody, their focus is money. They don't really necessarily care about the story anymore at that point. And that was Lucas's biggest mistake, in my opinion, was allowing his baby, knowing that there was a chance that it could be tainted and ruined from what we remembered, and
Mhm.
completely just go against everything that Star Wars lore had built up to that point. Um, Now, I'll give Disney a couple credits. How they explained the Force was probably the most accurate part of Star Wars when it came to how the Force works.
Mhm.
Uh, and the music was still on cue, because that's John Williams and he's a legend. And the space battles were still awesome. Although if a ship can go into hyperspace and just cut another ship in half, why haven't we tried this up until this point? Oh, gee, let's see. No, I don't think anybody's tried this before. Let's try it. What garbage writing.
Yeah.
Still
Although,
cool to look at.
like from a like Rebel or um the Order's standpoint, like that's a multi-gazillion dollar vessel that you're just sacrificing to take out another ship. So financially, I could see that not being the best tactic to use often, but as a last
Yeah.
ditch resort, it does hold water that it should have happened before.
I will
Yeah.
say
But
some of
yeah.
the cinematography was amazing. Like, so
Yeah.
to kind of jump in with the same idea that we've been following, I didn't hate uh, The Force Awakens. I actually liked that movie, but
Yep.
one of my favorite scenes is at the end where it's a dark scene, and all of a sudden the blue lightsaber lights up. I love that imagery. So cinematography wise, I think it had some decent moments, and that's
Mhm.
one of them. Uh, but
I agree. I think you start off, you got that. I enjoyed The Force Awakens. I do think it was a ripoff of A New Hope, but you know, new Death Star, new First Order is just another version of the Empire. Though I do think, like we were talking about, you got three separate people. J.J. Abrams, who's a fantastic sci-fi director. He's best known probably for his work on Star Trek, the movies, which we'll get into that on another episode. But I liked them. I thought the movies were great. Um, but I was really excited for what he was going to do. And The Force Awakens was a solid opening movie, new interesting characters. Kylo Ren freezes a laser bolt in midair with the Force. Like, that's awesome. We've never seen that before in Star
Mhm.
Wars from a Sith. I was like, holy cow, he just freezes that. And then, like, who's this Poe Dameron guy? Who's this new, like, interesting looking BB-8 droid? Like, that's cool. Like, plans? Like, what are they trying to find? Like, Luke's in hiding? Like, why would he be? Like, okay, interesting. Like, it starts off, you're intrigued as a stormtrooper decides to default from the First Order and join the rebellion. That's cool. That's interesting story. They started off Finn's character great, and then they took a giant crap on him.
Mhm.
And same thing with Poe. Like, Poe was my favorite character pretty much throughout the whole series. Um, Besides Kylo Ren, obviously. Like, Adam Driver carried the entire series. No matter what anybody says, he's a great actor, and he's very serious about learning his part. So even though he acted like a spoiled man child after taking his helmet off, and he honestly became like kind of pathetic after he took his helmet off, and he's just like, whoa, 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 just screaming. It's like, um, are you okay? Like, all right, dude, like, I get you love daddy, granddaddy Vader, but like, relax. All right.
I will say, watching Force Awakens, I counted. I don't remember the number, but I counted how many times he took his helmet off and put it back on, took his helmet off, put it back on, and it irritated me because I was like, this is ridiculous. Either leave it on or take it off. Stop putting it back on and off.
I agree because as a writer, that's your like transition point from movie to movie of your character changing who they are, which he obviously makes multiple changes through those three movies. With the helmet on should have been one version of Kylo Ren, and taking it off should have been him shedding that version of himself. Though, like they
I
missed
agree.
an opportunity there.
Yep.
Yeah, like him stomping, shattering his mask. That was a growth for his character. Now,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna lie, it looked cool when it was put back together with like the red, like, sealed lines and everything with like the Knights of Ren behind him. But I'm like, you gotta choose which way you're gonna go.
Yep.
Okay. If they would have had the same director for all three movies, J.J. Abrams, I think it would have been probably a lot more accurate lore-wise. The movies would have connected and communicated with each other. The characters' arcs would have been more fleshed out because you had cool characters. You even brought back like Landau Calrissian, Carrie Fisher, rest in peace, Harrison Ford, and but you go into Star Wars 8. You start off epically with
Mhm.
this awesome space battle, these bombers, the music, bum bum ba dum 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 dum, a little bit of humor, Poe Dameron just like talking like, can he hear me? Yeah, he can hear you. Like, excuse me, this is Director Hux, and I require like bomb them. And these big, awesome looking bombers come out of nowhere, and then they all get destroyed, and you're just like, oh, well, that was what for cinema, like
Yeah.
classic effect, or I don't know. That was like, yeah, it made. But Canto Bite, we've talked about this before. The most needless, useless, worthless arc ever, just to bring in Benicio del Toro's character. And if anybody says anything different, they're mistaken. Because what did they actually do there? You have the two most useless characters at that point, Finn and Rose. Rose more so.
I can't stand that character.
And
Worst character in the history of written or
what did they think? Oh, we're gonna bring her in as a possible love interest, but I thought Finn had a thing for Rey. I'm confused now. But now apparently Rose and hit her.
So really, just to interject really quickly, I think that was what made me the saddest with that final trilogy of all is they set up so much. The return of Han Solo, the return of Leia. Could Rey be Luke's long distance child? Like all these possible arcs, whether they were going to be them or not. Like they set up all these questions that drew fans in and then just did not pull any of them off because they didn't do credit to anyone except for Leia. And I think they only did that because of her passing. Like that's the only reason like they did justice to her character. And she could have been like, if they wanted to front Star Wars as being like, here are the powerful females you should be standing for, they had such a chance with Leia in the end, and they dropped the ball. And now they're going to go in a different direction. So that's just my take. They set up so much that had us all excited and then threw it all away.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. That's why I loved A Force Awakens, because there was so much potential. They had so many avenues they could have headed down, and then they just destroyed it all.
They talk about, they're just like, well, you just are intimidated of a powerful female character. No, not at all. Daisy Ridley's a phenomenal actress. If you've seen anything else she's acted in, it's honestly a disgrace to her as an actress of what you did with her character. And the same thing with John Boyega. He's a great actor. He really, I think he's got a little bit too big of a mouth and sometimes talks about stuff he shouldn't. But my personal opinion, just play your role. And he did. Took the script they gave him and he did the best he could with it. It was the same with Poe. But both Oscar Isaac and John Boyega are like, what are you trying to do with our characters? You're literally putting them on like paths that make no sense whatsoever with what JJ just did in the first film. But okay, we're going to follow our scripts because we're dedicated to our roles and we want the fans to be happy. Well, here comes little Rose, a little happy, another female character that could have been cool. Possibly they were leading towards something interesting. But screw Rey and Finn's relationship. That has nothing. Oh, and magically, Rey can pick up a lightsaber, and so can Finn, and they can wield it against a trained Jedi or Sith, a trained Sith. Who, by the way, people were just like, Kylo's weak. Dude, he took a blast from a bowcaster in his ribs and was using force healing while fighting. That's how awesome Kylo Ren is. My favorite character, even though they ruined him too.
Also talking about power, he took a kyber crystal that was cracked and formed a lightsaber for it and was able to use it successfully.
Yeah. How many Siths or Jedis have used unstable kyber crystals in their they're like, well, why does he need the two ports on the sides? Because it's unstable. It needs a power outsource to go so that the blade is not unstable itself. That's not something that's easy to wield. That's why he had the two little ports, is for the power needed somewhere else to go, because that's how an unstable kyber crystal, anywhere through lore or video games that you see it, it is a random, very rare artifact that you come across. And but no, it was the whole Canto Bite arc made me want to scratch my nails against a chalkboard, because
it was just political propaganda for me. And I know we're not going to get political on this channel, and I just think objectively, regardless of what you believe, that arc was nothing but put in there because blah. And it was not enjoyable. I couldn't relate to it. It was silly, like you said, just to introduce Benedicto del Toro. I can't speak tonight, but
I mean, even his character was worthless. I mean, what did
yeah.
he add to the actual story besides being like, oh, surprise, actually, I'm going to make a deal with the First Order? Really, like we didn't see that coming? Come on.
I mean, it's one of those things, and to tie writing in a little bit, when you have a character who could do the exact same thing as any other character in the story, that character is excessive and not needed. Because the First Order at any point could have captured them on that planet, or at any point as they were leaving or going to that planet. It was already set up that it was super dangerous for them to try and escape. All it would take is one, the Knights of Ren, who they left in the dark for that entire movie, uh, 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 Captain Phasma, who was useless throughout the whole trilogy, but planned to be this big villain. She didn't do anything. I mean, to introduce him because he wanted to be in the movie, it was silly and pointless.
No, it was like you said, Alfred. I mean, there was a lot of things they did for political correctness, and that is a thing in films where they take arcs of a TV show or a movie and they do things with the characters for whatever they think they're doing it for. But when us as fans, people who are loyal and have been dedicated to these characters and the story for so long, see it just tainted and completely changed directions for no other reason than it needs to be this way, because no, it actually doesn't. You need to go study, like the man Peter Jackson did with Lord of the Rings. He went and studied all the lore. He's like, all right, we're going to make sure that this is tip top shape, that these actors that we hire on are going to do their jobs professionally and take the roles seriously and learn who they're playing. And with the Star Wars sequel trilogy, the sad thing is they had so many opportunities to really succeed and drive that nail straight into the coffin the right way. And after The Last Jedi, we all had hope that The Rise of Skywalker maybe could fix. I was hesitant because they killed Luke and Snoke in the same movie. It's like, well, who was Snoke supposed to be? We'll never know. Was it Plagueis? Was it Mace Windu back from, the years with a revenge plot against the Skywalkers? Was it supposed to be Grand Admiral Thrawn as the overarching villain? We'll never know. But then
Snoke
you
was
bring
such a
back
great
Ian
villain.
McDiarmid. I know. You saw what he did, right? Hand, lightning, shot it at the floor and used the floor as a circuit driver and sent it up into Kylo Ren from the floor. Ugh. I wanted to know more immediately. I'm like, who is this dude? Who is this tall, ugly looking thing that can manipulate force lightning better than Sheev ever could? Oh, he was just a clone that was malfunctioned and malformed that was supposed to be actual Palpatine. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. It was supposed to be Plagueis, but y'all lost it. Y'all lost it, and then JJ tried to pick up the slack. He's like, I'm gonna do what I can. Let me look at the books. Okay, in the books, Palpatine had clones across the galaxy and outer universes. That could maybe lead to something with Grand Admiral Thrawn down the line in another version of the First Order. Maybe it can fix, or at least leave a little bit of hope. But he needed more time. If he was going to do anything good with it, though, that ending fight, you got Palpatine against Rey and Ben Solo. You need to be having Palpatine dual wield lightsabers, like in the Clone Wars, and have a lightsaber battle, not just sit back and forth, talk to each other, just like, I'm all the Sith. And Rey, well, I'm all the Jedi. What a horrible line. What a garbage line. You're all the Jedi. Congratulations. Wow. What a way to ruin a possible epic moment.
For full disclosure, I only watched Rise of Skywalker on CinemaSins, which is another great YouTube channel for watching movies. But I couldn't watch the full movie. I didn't want to watch the full movie. But being a Star Wars fan, I felt I owed it to the series just to kind of see what that movie was about. And I didn't think I was
Yeah.
missing much by the way they showed it. I was just like, whatever.
It was horrible, if that gives you any sense. Only good part about the movie was that Billy D. Williams came back as Lando. That
Yeah.
was
I
it.
saw that. Yeah.
That part was awesome. They had some interesting parts in the movie. That again, that's what made it so aggravating, is you had these parts that were so cool. Rey shot force lightning. That's pretty cool. There's only been one Jedi I know of that did that, and that was Aayla Secura in the video games. Like, all right, tell me more. Oh, she's Palpatine's granddaughter. What? When did she even have kids? You're
Not just
full of
that, but
crap.
he's like in my mind, he's like Voldemort. He didn't care for love. Love was alien to him. And to think that he had time to have even not just a wife, but be attracted to somebody other than power itself, just it doesn't compute to me. It makes absolutely no sense.
And if you're
No,
gonna do that, set it up. Like tell that story early on of when before he fell to the dark side himself. Like set up some portion of that story so that it comes full circle, not, oh, we're just gonna pull this out.
because you still end it with Rey saying, "My last name's Skywalker." Just have her be a Skywalker from the beginning. Have her be an offspring of Obi-Wan and Anakin or Luke or really anything. I mean, apparently Luke became some depressed hermit who drank blue milk on an island, which Luke would never do. As even Mark Hamill said, he's like, "You guys really pissed me off with my character. This is not what Luke Skywalker is about. I'm just going to go back
Yep.
to voicing animated characters." Yeah, I don't blame you, Mark. Go for it. It's better than
Yeah.
what they did with that garbage.
Absolutely.
Folks, let us know what you think, because I mean, we're all pretty much on board with the way we feel about the sequels, and I think just about 90% of other Star Wars fans feel the same. But if you have anything that you did enjoy, like we said, it's not we hated everything, it's that it had potential and they literally took a giant dump on it because they didn't care.
So
Yep.
just a couple things for me. Rose taking a speeder and crashing it into Finn's, and both of them end up perfectly okay, baffled me. Because if we go back to episode 1, when the little evil alien guy, I can't remember his name, racing against Anakin, when those speeders crashed, those people
Bulba.
died. Saboba, thank you. They didn't survive a crash. And throughout
No.
all of Star Wars, if a plane crashed or something happened to a speeder, they were gone. It wasn't like, oh, look, we're completely fine.
Can we mention, since you brought up pod racing, that's the most legendary scene in Star Wars, the pod racing race? That was so cool. And even just Anakin at the end, little kid Anakin with R2 up in space taking out the separatist ship. Phantom Menace is an awesome movie. For those of you who are just like, I don't like Phantom Menace because I've just watched YouTube videos or whatever else,
And
if it's
Jar Jar
been
stinks.
15 years, yeah, go watch Phantom Menace again. Do yourself a favor and watch it with a fresh new perspective after the garbage of the sequel trilogy. And you will, I guarantee you'll love the prequels. I guarantee it.
I have to
Little,
say, like in arcades, like after that movie came out, the pod racing arcade machine was
Yep.
every kid's dream of, I want to be a pod racer, even if they didn't like Star Wars. That thing that they threw into the universe was just iconic on its own.
since I think we all love music here, I want to bring in 2 songs. One is the iconic Weird Al Yankovic's "Saga Begins," which
Mhm.
really does a beautiful job summing up the prequel series. So, and then the new video is Lost Souls, Childhood Died. It's a hilarious short song about the sequel series. And they just go into like one of the lines is how did Jedi die from being tired? Uh, and why did Ray no, why did Leia walk past Chewie and hug Ray? And I was just like, this is a great song. It fits all of why I can't stand the sequel series, because it forced Ray to be like the iconic character, and when you force a character into that role instead of letting it grow organically, true fans are going to notice and just be alienated by it.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%. And now that all of you have listened to us ramble about the prequels, the original, and the sequels, which I hope you enjoyed all of our rants. We'll have many Star Wars videos. So don't worry, we're not going to be able to cover everything in each episode because we generally try to keep it about an hour, with some slightly being over. But we will cover the Han Solo and the Rogue One movie with other spin-off TV shows and live action shows that have been done. And the animated shows will get covered on their own basis and whatnot. For the last question that we're going to go over for you guys, do you have a favorite battle scene from across all the Star Wars movies? And it's okay, even if it's from the sequel, I will allow it. But while you guys are, I see your eyes thinking, I'll go first. For me, my favorite battle scene is hands down, Anakin and Obi-Wan on Mustafar while Yoda is fighting Emperor Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith. I mean, it's the greatest cinematic, masterful lightsaber duel of all time, period. And obviously, you can have a Star Wars movie without lightsabers. Rogue One's a prime example, but battle scene, oof, it's a tie between that and the Starfighter battle at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, because that was pretty cool too. Yeah, that's me.
You want to go next, Alfred, or you want me to go?
You can go.
Okay. I got two, but I do kind of like have a comment with it. It's funny that most of the battle scenes in like the original trilogy aren't the best, but I know like cinematics and everything got way better as everything went on. But I think most people would agree a lot of the best scenes come from the prequels, even if they're not the most liked movies out of them all. But Darth Maul, the battle on, is it Coruscant
It might be.
or Naboo?
It's Naboo, because that's
Naboo,
where
yeah.
the
Yeah.
yeah,
So
they were all
Qui-Gon
on Naboo.
Jinn, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul, that battle, just masterpiece with the dual lightsaber and then the getting cut in half at the end. Spoilers of Darth Maul getting eviscerated there. Just absolutely my favorite. But the forbidden technique that Kylo Ren uses when he kills Han Solo of turning on the lightsaber, just like, because it's such a like, you don't see many Sith do it, and Jedi it's forbidden, but just for him to do it that way, just, it's not a battle scene, but that always leaves that mark for me. It's one of those things from those movies that'll always leave a mark.
It'll probably come as no surprise. One of my favorites is Vader versus Luke in Return of the Jedi. It's one of my favorites. Bringing Palpatine sitting there and the Force lightning and everything. But as far as like a space battle, I go into A New Hope when they destroy the Death Star. It it's the first like true X-wing fighting scene you get. It's just great, and then of course use the Force. I mean that for me is iconic. Uh, but I love that seeing that air space battle.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of things, and I'll even say from episode 8, because I really do like the way that The Last Jedi started off. It was before it became a nightmare. But point being is that space battle, it brought you back to old school Star Wars space battles. I mean, the soundtrack that John Williams had for it, these new insane bombers that came out of nowhere, and like Poe Dameron with his awesome like teched out X-wing. And I mean, don't even get started on Kylo Ren's TIE silencer. I mean, that thing is sick. The way it sounds, the way it flies. But that was another cool scene that we had. But besides that, that's, I think that's all of our favorites right there. Yeah.
Yep.
I want to do an honorable mention for Hoth. That's a cool little
Oh, yeah.
Earth bait, oh, or not Earth, but like planet based fighter pilot
Yeah, like
scene.
an M-based planet, as Star Trek would
Mhm,
say, like, a livable life, whatnot. But
mhm.
um, yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as always, you've been fantastic to listen to us ramble on about nerdery, and we hope you enjoyed Star Wars Part 1 video, and we'll have many more to come. Again, if you have anything that you would like us to go over or like us to talk about, please leave those in the comments on YouTube or reach out to us on the Facebook page, or TikTok or any of that. With that being said, This has been the War of Nerds podcast. Do 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 funky fantasy. Do 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 do. The bowl. Do 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 Stratoceros. Da 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 da. That's the War of Nerds. Till next time.